Hey, everybody, welcome back. Dr. Laura Sicola here with Vocal Impact Productions. And I am, as always, excited to bring you what's going to be an incredible discussion where I know that everybody, if you're joining us today, it's because you have one solid driving question that bugs the heck out of you on a regular basis. Because frankly, it's really hard to answer without some good help. And I found someone who's going to give us some fabulous insights about how to answer that question. And the issue is, of course, when you are somehow selling a product, a service, whatever it is that you're offering, whatever is your unique, heroic identity of sorts, the value that you provide to your clients, your customers, your coworkers, whoever it is that you serve, how do you articulate the ROI, the return on investment, that little acronym that everybody is so focused on? And especially if it's not a direct financial return that you would directly get from it, how do you frame it? How do you express to somebody why they should invest their time, their money, their resources, their energy with you? So today, I am bringing, and I want to welcome to the screen here, Keith Campagna. Keith, thank you so much for joining us today from the ROI Shop.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks, Laura.
Now, give us a quick sense. Keith is the Chief Sales Officer. I'm going to stop talking about you in third person now that I've introduced you to everybody else. But give us a quick overview. What is the ROI Shop? And then for everybody, suspend your decision of, wait, should I be listening to this? Yes, you should, if you're here. And we're going to show you exactly why we're going to use Keith's situation, his company, his product, etc., as a case study that we will then use to extrapolate into the world, no matter what kind of business you're in, to help us all get better at articulating that ROI. So Keith, what is the ROI Shop?
In simple terms, the ROI Shop is sales enablement software that helps sales reps quantify the business impact in terms that their buyers understand. So the buyer can then take that business case to their financial decision approver and present something that makes very good sense, that makes it easy and to articulate the value, and it makes everyone more confident about the buying decision.
Okay, so let's put that into a little bit more concrete terms for everybody out there. So you've got software that you are using, and your target audience is typically sales teams, sales reps from other companies.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right.
And the challenge that those sales reps are facing is the same one that everybody else, meaning here on this call, on this conversation, is having, which is the challenge when you can't, even people who are in sales, if I'm hearing you correctly, people whose job is sales aren't necessarily good at articulating the active value of whatever the product or service is that they're selling. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It doesn't matter if you're in sales. The truth of the matter is that if you're an entrepreneur or a parent, you're trying to sell some sort of an idea and move a group of people forward, right? So even as anybody who's trying to encourage change, especially in sales, right? The ability to have a conversation about the future state that makes people feel comfortable and maybe even excited about working with you, that's what articulating value is all about.
And thank you for framing it that way. The idea of, so when we're going to use the word sales in two different ways. Yes, Keith's program is about active sales in the traditional sense. And anybody out there who is in sales or is otherwise in an entrepreneurial role of some sort has a sales component to your daily routine, your responsibilities of sorts. But as you mentioned, I gotta stop doing that. As you mentioned, there is even when you're a parent, even if you are in whatever other IT, accounting, whatever function, you have a desire to influence decision making. You
Yes.
have a desire to have an impact on people, persuasion, etc. Whatever it is, whatever idea that you are proposing to others, if you see an outcome that is something that you believe is in the best interest of that organization, you need to quote unquote sell your idea. And so don't think of the word, for those of you who feel like, oh, am I in sales? I don't want to be in sales. I don't like the idea of sales. I don't have a sales role. It's icky. It's not icky. The idea is we're going into persuasion. It's about influence, with the ideal outcome being in the best interest of the person you're trying to convey that to. Am I right in this, Keith?
You are, and you just made me remember one of my earliest sales influence, the one and only Jeffrey Gitomer. And he says that nobody wants to be sold and everyone loves to buy. So really what we're talking about here is how do we align and help our very busy, probably stressed out buying audience feel good about making a buying decision. This is the element that I think is being missed no matter what you do for a living. It's this notion of experience, right? We talk about candidate experience, we talk about consumer experiences, but what we don't talk about is that buyer experience. And it's the buyer that we spend a lot of time understanding so that when it comes down to, demonstrating those things that help people want to do work with you, right? They want to recognize, A, they're being heard. Two, you understand their problem. And three, that you are helping them get there. You acknowledge that to go to A to B isn't exactly a straight line for most situations. So once you get them feeling that way, well, now we've taken the emotion out of the sale. And now all we need to do is make the numbers look believable. And at the end of the day, when you do those two together, you start a hell of a relationship.
And it's an important piece that I heard in there earlier about helping people to envision the future state.
Yeah.
Helping people understand, if you implement my idea, my product, my service, my whatever else it happens to be, it could be just an idea about how you uh, restructure a project that you're doing. If that's where your idea of influence is going to come in, you need to help the listener. So you're using the term buyer, but again, anybody out there who's listening, where you can substitute in your own mind the listener,
Audience.
the boss, the audience. I use the word audience all the time as my broad description of whoever you're talking to, who's ever yes you want to get to, the person with whom you want to have an agreement formation of some sort. You can use it. We're going to use the terms audience, listener, and buyer all interchangeably. So just substitute the variables in your brain as suits your situation. Okay, so let's see. There's a couple people who are mentioning that LinkedIn, I love you, LinkedIn, but your streaming services are kind of lousy. So please note that in the chat, if you are having trouble with the LinkedIn not connecting well, please go to the YouTube channel. This is why we have multiple channels, and we're going to post that again in just a second for anybody who just is joining us. The YouTube streaming works fine. So you should have no reason to miss anything of the content that we're sharing here today. So with that, Keith, you shared with me something the other day that I thought was fascinating, and it was about the problem with regard to how often people get the yes in sales. Some of those statistics when people in the traditional sales or entrepreneurial roles go to try to get the yes with regard to peer buy this product or service, what are the numbers?
Well, in general, and I'm being generous with these numbers here, not to disrupt anybody, but what we know when we talk to sales organizations in every industry of all shapes and sizes. So it's anecdotal, but it's also very real in its context. For the most part, if you are a successful sales organization, you are closing around 25% of your business opportunities. And these aren't just conversations. These are forecasted in forecast opportunities. 25% of the time you win. The other 20 to 25% of the time you lose to competitors, which means that a no decision outcome happens more than 50% of the time. Every quarter, every industry, every company. And so the challenge to really grow an organization isn't how do we fill the pipeline? It's how do we close the deals we already have in pipe? And so anyone who's trying to grow their company by way of revenue, new logos, whatever, the truth of the matter is that the biggest opportunity you have is to prevent no decision outcomes. And Laura, how do we know what prevents somebody from staying with the status quo? Not knowing what the future looks like, not knowing what their business impact would look like. And again, we go back around the carousel, right?
Yes, yes. So in case anybody missed that, or you're grabbing your lunch or something, and we're only half tuned in for a second, broadly speaking, anytime you're trying to sell the product, the service, etc., you have the conversations with the client, and only 25% of the time, 1 out of 4 conversations, you get the yes. Another 1 out of the 4, you get a hard no and they go with somebody else for, whatever myriad reason. But that means 2 out of 4, 1 out of 2. That's about as much math as I do here. But 50%, half of the time, there's no decision.
Mhm.
People give you the answer that drives everybody nuts. I don't know. I have to think about it. Let me get back to you.
Yeah.
And you know that more often than not, that means you'll never hear from them again. That
Yeah.
means they're in kind of analysis paralysis. They're uncertain. Maybe it's a kind of a politely passive aggressive way of saying, I don't want it. It's too expensive or something else. But otherwise, it's unlikely to turn into a yes at that point. Now, when people say, I have to think about it,
Mhm.
I love every now and then I'll hear, I have to talk to my wife. If it's somebody who's directly and wants to, is approached me independently as opposed to with their, through the company. But if it's an independent, I have to laugh because once in a while I have to check with my husband or somebody else. But is when I hear I have to talk to my wife, there's a whole different ballgame going on because I'm that wife. And when my husband comes talking to me about some big investment, I'm like, all right, let me hear it. What do you,
Right.
yeah, yeah. And
Right.
it's my job to be that firewall to
That's
make sure
right.
that stuff, only the right decisions get made. So I'm a hard sell. So I
Yeah.
know if you're going to the wife, we're going to have a very different conversation because actually, I want to talk to her myself. But when people say I need to think about it, Keith, what are some of the things they need to think about?
Well, there's the answer to that, but maybe before we get to that, Laura,
Yeah.
let's talk about what they are thinking about,
Yeah.
right? First and foremost, it's 2022. People got plenty on their mind. We know inside of the workforce that stress levels keep going higher and higher. Mental health is becoming a bigger and bigger concern. Productivity slowing down across service industries and employment. All the statistics basically say that people are pretty well maxed out. So the idea of asking somebody to change what they're doing in any capacity, right, means that they've got to consider real things like, is this worth the time? Who else does this impact? What other things can I be doing with my time? Laura, how often do you get to think of those three things, right? I know for me, never. Like I'm life moves by so fast. So we have to take a step back and take a more, for lack of better terms, empathetic approach to understand the current state of our buyer, right? And then if we get to that psyche, we realize that we need to speak just like any conversation, whether or not you're talking to an adult or a kid. If the person you're talking to feels and thinks and believes that you are speaking to them in their terms, they relax, they trust, right? And so that's the process here. We have to help people slow down enough so that they can begin to clear their mind and see what a better future might look like without having all those other stresses freak them out.
Okay. So what are then some of the things that people are thinking about, who are we going to? I know one of the things that I often hear is, if there's another decision maker involved, who
Yeah,
else's opinion do you
yeah,
have to
yeah,
consider? Whose buy-in do you need? Whose approval do you need if
yeah.
you're not the final decision maker?
Well, yeah, and if you're selling B2B, right? Depending on the size of the company, I'm sure there are competing projects. So if there are 10 of them, and you sit and most of the time, high majority here, people speak in terms of 70% productivity gains and better. We like the software demoed well, right? It's too soft. But if 1 out of 10 people produces something that can articulate the value to that CFO, well, now the CFO is thinking in their terms as well. So it's kind of it's a transferable concept, but people are thinking about who else needs to be concerned. How sure am I? What risks are there? There's whether or not this becomes an actual conversation. These are the things that are inherently being processed when people make a decision like the one where the gentleman has to go to his wife, right? That's what the wife does.
So then, as a service provider or, a sales rep or entrepreneur, et cetera, how do we get people, what is the challenge? Why do people struggle so hard in trying to articulate their value? Because I feel like most people, if it's your own company or your own franchise or your own product, et cetera, like everybody knows intrinsically how valuable it is,
Yeah.
why it's worth the investment, why it's something that you can't afford not to utilize, not to connect with. But there seems to be this challenge in going from understanding the general value versus the ROI. So, can you give us, for those out there who maybe are a bit newer to entrepreneurship, et cetera, what does ROI mean to you?
Return on investment means how much money and time am I going to make or save, period. It's a very straightforward concept. The challenge is that we have, and I'm going to go general here just to kind
Of
of
course.
maybe try to hit everyone at one time. We
Yep.
have marketing, which is branding, which is, just basic awareness. And then we have sales. And the art of the sale is to really allow someone to buy, right? So the challenge that most people have, and listen, I have the pleasure of working with an entrepreneur group here in the Lehigh Valley. It's a lot of fun. And most people who are so smart in one capacity simply never think in terms of what that buyer needs are. So the art of the sale is truly the art of the buying. How do we help people understand, kind of we mold that conversation for individuals?
I find that it's so common, and I don't train salespeople in sales. That's not my space. But working with any leader in how to get buy-in
Yeah.
for an idea, when it's the most common pattern and series of pitfalls that I hear is people, when they've got their idea or product or service or whatever it is that you're promoting in the moment, they get stuck in describing features
Mhm.
rather than values and outcomes. Or if you're familiar with Simon Sinek and his Start With Why book and his great Golden Circle TED talk that he did, people don't buy features. They don't buy how big, how many cells are in the spreadsheet. They don't buy into structures and materials and things. They buy into, okay, what's in it for me? That I always say people are all tuned into the same radio station, right? WIFM. What's in it for me? How is that thing going to benefit me? How will it make my life easier, better, more positive, less stressful? So in setting the why first, the return on the investment, that future state, the return, how will that thing make me happier? In
Mhm.
simple terms. And when we can express, okay, here's what the future might look like if you go
Right.
with my suggestion,
Right.
then they'll want to know, okay, so tell me how you can do that again. Now
Right.
we can get into the features. Now you've got my interest. Now you've got my curiosity piqued. And so now we can go into the tell me what the features are that will get me those benefits, that will get me
Mhm.
that future state where life is better than it is for me right now.
And I'll add to that, as you get better at developing that skill set of talking about the why, which is the value, right? That's really it. What happens is the person that's going to buy from you realizes that you're already thinking in their terms. You're already thinking in the what's in it for them terms. Often they don't even question the feature functionality, because how on earth did you get here without having that feature functionality, right? So, like in the corporate world, of course, there's going to be 13.5 people that make that decision. But ultimately, in the hands-on, in the trenches, small business one-on-one transactions, if you can understand their value and they believe you, the features and functions become second nature.
Yes. Yes. So, and in doing that, one of the other strategies, and you can tell me if this resonates with you as well. And this is something I've been talking about for a few years now, especially in the context. It's triggered originally from looking at political debates, but it's about the ability to get your message into what I like to call tweetable and repeatable sound bites.
Yeah.
There's a need to spoon feed the key points, the key value prop, so that whoever you're talking to, your audience, your buyer, your prospect, your whoever can. There's three features of the tweetable and repeatable soundbite that I think people tend to not implement. And it's that whatever that key point is you're sharing has to be easy to understand, easy to remember, and easy to repeat,
Mhm.
because they're going to take whatever you're explaining back to somebody else, and either they're going to ask for permission to implement and to execute, or they are going to explain why they've decided to do so.
Right.
And so if they can't easily articulate what they've understood from you, then it turns into word soup. And
Yep.
whoever's listening to them goes, what? Eh, why? And then they feel silly and they feel foolish. Or if they need the permission, they're not going to feel comfortable going and seeking that approval, the budget approval from the CFO or whoever it is, if they can't articulate for themselves why they think they should, because they'll just look and feel stupid. And nobody wants to feel stupid. So how do we get that value into such a crystal clear, easy to understand, easy to remember, and easy to repeat framing that they should stick in their pocket and just whip out like a cue card almost on
Right.
demand and be able to easily share, and I'll use the term metaphorically speaking, evangelize that message to anybody out there whose buy-in and agreement they seek.
Yeah. So I love this part because it makes me like, I know it sounds a little, whatever, tongue in cheek, but that's how much fun we're having with the ROI shop, because we give, like, the methodology is anyone could do this, right? To do it at scale requires having a little bit more help, but we tell people all the time, I'll readily share the methodology that's working out there. You don't need the software to do it. But what's very interesting is that after hundreds and hundreds of implementations, what we ask people that, people come to us with, they range from, we have no idea how to quantify our value, to here's 7,000 spreadsheets, nobody's using them, and we need to make it simple. And the beauty about us is that we're software sales guys. We are not engineers. We're not anybody except for guys that understand what it's like to have to figure this stuff out. And during implementation, we always ask the same thing. What are the top 2 reasons why most of your clients are there? And then explain them to us like we're in first grade.
Okay, so explain it to us in first grade. Let's use this example. So here's a perfect segue. So for everybody else out there, I'm going to ask Keith, I'm going to ask you to talk about, give us an understanding about how that works in your world as a case study.
Yeah.
What does your software do for whom? Give us an example of a client that you would be trying to promote the ROI shop to, who would benefit from that, from using your software. If you were talking to them, how would you explain the value to them, and how that will help them explain their value to their clients? And then we're going to back out, and everybody's so listen to the example, and then we'll kind of coach from here to figure out how the rest of us who are not in software or IT, or maybe you are, but I'm not, and many of people on this call are not. So what can we take, what can we extrapolate from this example into the rest of our world? So Keith, tell us about a typical exchange with you and who's the ideal client for the ROI shop? Who would gain the greatest value from using your software?
Yeah, the success comes from software companies that are over 20 sales reps, and they're just really starting to blow up, and they're experiencing a ton of no decisions. It's slowing down their growth, right? So again, push past that software, because this is really, it's that basic, right? It's this obvious. The first thing you want to do is help them understand that you're listening to them. So collect their current state. Give them an interactive way. If you're sitting in front of them, great. If you're online, give them something they could share with, right? And then just basically ask them those questions. Let me understand where you are. And then
which questions? Let's be specific. And what are a couple of questions that you would ask?
Like how, let's just say if you were doing,
so let's keep it, rather than keeping it broad and generic, give us an example. Who are you talking to? A company that sells software, like what, accounting software, or?
Yeah, let's call it HR technology.
Okay, great. HR tech software. Okay. So if I'm an HR tech company, I do HR outsourcing, let's say. All right. So then where do we go?
What we're going to do is we're going to collect the current state. Let's walk through your current processes. And at the end of that conversation, I'm going to be able to share back with you in time and dollars what your current state is costing you, right? So you gave me the numbers. We walk through it. We make it nice and easy for you to change the numbers when you feel like you might be too high or too low. Not a problem. And then what we do is we incorporate what I call context around that current state. You just told me that it's taking you this how many hours. Here's a video and another client talking about how they save 50%. And we know most of our clients save somewhere between 50 to 70%. What do you think you would get? And now that individual is putting in a little bit of context, essentially just saying, I'm doing the research. I know I have a pain. These are my numbers. So I'm going to say, let's say 50%, right? And now we're in a position where we can ultimately show them that future state. Okay, so then if we were to save you 50%, and there's a distinction here. We're going to save you that 50%, which gets you, let's say, 500 hours. This is where most people stop. They stop and they go, well, look, we're going to save you 500 hours. But again, people are super busy. They don't have the time to think about what they're going to do with that 500 hours. So now let's extend the conversation further. We just got you 500 more hours, Laura. What are the top 3 things that you would do with those 500 hours? And then as we enter that into the conversation, we can, again, go back. So if we were going to, let's say, revamp our recruiting process, what kind of impact would that have on the company? And you could extrapolate that from the conversation. Now, they're not going in saying, when that person wants to go present to the finance approver, they're not saying, here's a software, 70%, and whatever, blah, blah, blah. They're saying, hey, remember when we talked about the idea of we need to do ABC? I think I came up with a way. We're going to get the time to do ABC because we're going to partner with this company. Here's the rest of the business case. Let's talk. You see how it changes the game?
Yes. It's not just about, hey, we should buy this software to manage our system,
Right.
or because it's even for the sake of, because we'll get back 500 hours. That's there. That's still part of the features. It's technically a benefit. It's a result. It's a product of sorts, but it's not one that has a lot of emotional value. I mean, look, everybody would like to have more time. Nobody feels like they have enough hours in the day. At least nobody that I've met. So, but then to be able to say beyond that, what would you do if? And I think 2 of the most persuasive phrases out there that helps people to really envision that future state is number 1, imagine. Just very simple. Imagine you had this, or imagine things were this way. Where's your imagine? And number 2, an alternative would be, what if? What if you had 500 extra hours? What would you do with that?
Right.
And why would you do that? Go back to your why. What's the motivation for wanting those 500 hours to create that new system, new hires, new branches, new product rollouts, new, you pick it, remodel your kitchen. That's what I would love to do with something.
Right.
So, where do you, and great, Dee, we got some terrific comments in the comment room. The what would you do if is a big piece, because you need people to say, what do I want? What is in my heart? What would motivate me? What would make my little happy bells go off in my brain, right? What makes my pupils dilate, go, ooh, I want that, is it? So then how do we get you there? Because that's your why. And from that why, then they say, okay, how do I do that again? Show me how you're going to do that. Okay. Now you're interested in the features. Now you're interested in how I'm going to, in what you have to learn to do with my product, with my service, with whatever else. Am I interpreting this correctly, Keith?
100%. 100%. And again, the beauty of this is that it's really human to human, right? Like, everybody on this call is a busy professional talking to other busy professionals. And I remember, Laura, thinking about our call, I remember at one point, my earlier sales years, someone said, when you cold call, you will be directed to the level you sound like, you speak like.
Yes.
Right? So if you can have that high-end conversation about the business impact, well, now, like the person at the bottom of the decision-making chain or list or whatever, they don't think in terms of business impact. The person who makes the decision does.
Yes. That's so good. All right. So I'm going to say that again, because in case anybody, again, just went to let the dog out or something and missed that, you need to not miss that. So, and I'll probably paraphrase it poorly so you can clean it up after I'm done garbling it out. But the notion that when you're calling someone, cold call or otherwise, if you're not with the person you need to be talking to, your conversation, your call is going to be routed to the level that you sound like. So if you're one of those people, and I still get these calls, I don't know how they, well, now I don't answer it anymore, but you get the calls where it's like, hello, is this Ms. which already you can't even say my name, click. So you don't know who you're talking to or why you're calling me, but, hello, I wanted to know, if how you are doing today. And it's like, watch my delete key go into overdrive. How fast can I hang up this call?
Mhm.
You sound, at best, you certainly don't sound authoritative. You don't sound like you're an executive who speaks to executives, who understands executives. So if I had somebody else underneath me in these ridiculous calls, at best, that's where you would go. But most likely, I'm just going to hang up on you. So how do you sound
Mhm.
authoritative enough? And this goes right back to everything that I teach as far as the verbal, vocal, visual alignment to project credibility in speaking. You have to know what you're going to say. This is the content. This is all the stuff that we've been talking about as far as articulating the why. That's the content of the messaging. And then being able to deliver it in a way that sounds like you believe it as much as your claim and as much as you want them to believe it. So you have that authority, that conviction, that passion, and the empathy, the openness, the relatability, that connectability in your voice in a way that it also kind of matches and mirrors the listener. Because if you get somebody who's on the phone and goes, yeah, okay, so you're talking about what? And you come in, hey, I got a great idea. They're going to be like, whoa, okay, decaf for you from now on. And yeah, you're not the kind of person I like to talk to.
Right.
Click. And
Right.
vice versa. You get somebody who's a higher energy person and they come on and you're going, yes, I would be interested in knowing how would you like to know how I can save you 500 hours? It's like,
Right.
no, I
Right.
don't know who you are, but there's no jive here. So
It's interesting. You didn't use the word confidence, but you reminded me of the word confidence,
yes,
and that is one of the most consistent areas of feedback that we get from just time and time again. And it's not just confidence in the sales rep; it's confidence in the buyer, because confidence is one of those shareable energies, right? Like the more I'm
yes,
sure of it, the more you're going to be sure of it, right?
yes.
So
Confidence
it
is
really
contagious.
speaks to the reason why this works. And then if you look at, and I always like doing this, but if you look at the amount, Gartner talks a ton about this kind of stuff, but you look at what happened after COVID, with COVID, how many more emails and how many more PDFs are now available online and getting thrown at everybody. So the amount of noise is getting higher and higher. And if you could come in and you actually sound in confident terms, and you know this because you've actually gone around the horn a couple times and you actually know that you produce value. You know how it works because
Yeah.
you've been in their shoes enough, your prospects or your audience's shoes enough, where you could speak on their level. And the rest of it just becomes a habit. It's really, that's the pleasure. This is something that's repeatable and scalable. So it's a lot of fun to see how it comes back in so many different directions.
Yes, yes, and fun, I think, is something that needs to really play a role in all of these conversations. Yes, there can be a little bit of, all different energies, right? Every conversation should have a range of energy from one moment to the next. So there's going to be moments where you're going, let's talk about the mess. What is the point? What is the pain point? What is the heaviness of where are things, let's just understate and say suboptimal at the moment? Where are you frustrated? Where are you not getting the value? Where are you not getting the performance? Where are you not getting the results that you're looking for? And why does that stink? Right? There's a heaviness to that energy. But then when you shift into that future state, the imagine, the what if, what would you do if, you know, there should be a smile on your face when you're talking about, there should be fun because it's like, oh, okay, well, let's see. If I could take over the world, here are the things that I would
Right,
love to start with, right? If
right.
if money were no object, if time were no object, if I had all the people that I ever wanted on my team to do these kinds of things, there should be a little smile that is in spite of themselves. They shouldn't be able to talk about it without a little smile breaking out at some point, because that's when you know there's an emotional shift and they're going to associate that emotional shift with you. You evoked that happiness. And that is, again, please, anybody out there, do not misunderstand. This is not, I will use a huge air quotes around like smarmy sales tactics. This is not about snake oil. This is not getting people to buy stuff they don't need. if you have a value, if you have a service, if you have a product, if you have whatever it is that you truly believe adds greater value to the person to whom you're trying to introduce it, then it is out of alignment. It is out of integrity to not help them see where there's value in this. I mean, I don't sell coaching just to get people to buy stuff they don't need. I do what I do because I believe that I can truly help someone be heard, be understood, be more effective, and find greater satisfaction and joy in their lives if they work with me. Why wouldn't I want to try to help somebody understand what they could do if you were able to get that CXO position, that you're in the VP role now, or you're in the SVP role now, and you want to be at the CXO level? What would you do with that? Why
Right.
do you want it? What would become possible for you? And frankly, if you don't know, that helps me realize that you may not be the right candidate for me to work with, because if you don't have a vision for your own future, I'm not going to force you to get one, but it just lets me know that, okay, well, come back when you have a vision, because my job is to help you achieve it, not help you figure out whether or not you have one. That's not what I do. I won't waste
Right.
your time. I won't waste your money. I won't waste my time. I want to make sure there's a good fit. That's so important for me. And it should be for everybody else out there too. Find the right fit and add value to create success and joy. That's what it's all about. So when you put yourself into that position of, I am here in service of you, I ask you these questions because I want you to be able to see where the value is, so then we can work together for this greater value for everybody. That's the motivation. It's not snake oil. If
No,
you're concerned about that, you either got to reshift your own mindset about what you do, what you promote, and why, or maybe it's time for a new job. But I'll leave that for somebody else to decide.
well, it's absolutely not about snake oil. What it's about is, what I heard you say is it's about the value of your own time. And that's the one thing everyone could agree upon. What's the most valuable thing that we all have? Time, because it's limited in some
It is the only
capacity.
unrenewable resource. Absolutely.
It comes back to, this is a phenomenal process to take upon yourself. I mean, there's plenty of content out there that like is there for you to understand
Yeah.
how you can create a different path, whether it be career path or personal path. It really, it becomes a wonderful practice for your business, but it also becomes something that you could think about in terms of yourself on a professional level, on a growth level. What do I do? What's the ROI of the amount of time with the time I'm spending, and is it getting me where I want to go?
Yes. Yes. And this is
So,
what people have to be able to articulate. So, and I realize one thing that we didn't do in the beginning, I forgot to address everybody else out there who's tuning in with us today. Please feel free to put in the chat if you want your name and what company you're with, or what your industry is, what your role is, your motivations for coming here today. We don't need all this. I don't expect your life autobiography, but anything that you do want to share. And if you have questions for me, for Keith, for whoever else, we want to take these questions organically. We're at about 6 or 7 more minutes left today. And if you've had a question that you've been dying to ask, here's your chance. But we really do want this to be a very organic conversation. We want to know why you're here and how we can add value to you. And of course, if you have any really fabulous takeaway points that you've received so far, there's a few in here that people love, the what would you do if, and the imagine kind of phrases, and remembering to use those. They're simple little details to incorporate to frame a conversation. But boy, when you do, what a difference it makes. So feel free to share with us what else you've taken away from today and what else you'd like to. We definitely want to add to answer any questions that you have. Any other thoughts, Keith? What have we missed so far?
ooh, I don't know. We're kind of moving pretty quick here.
Yeah, right. There's plenty we haven't covered, to say the least. But I think it comes down to, can you operationalize your value? And this is particularly hard for companies or for organizations who sell or who have services or products where it may not be an immediately obvious bottom line impact. Keith's your program is particularly valuable for people who are in sales roles otherwise, because it helps them to explain to their customers how much time, how much money, or other resource they will literally be able to save or make
Yeah.
if they use your software. And that shows a very direct, if I spend $1,000, I'll get back, 50,000 or
Yeah.
whatever it is, or this much time. And well, time is money. So what would that look like? That's not everybody out there, in coaching. And there's probably a lot of coaches out there who are listening, or people who are selling, insurance or whatever it happens to be. How do you operationalize for your audience, for your prospect, for your buyer, for whoever it is, your listener, what the value would be? And you can qualitatively operationalize in non-numerical but still measurable terms what the
Mhm.
value would be. So just by way of example, one of the things that I will always ask my people when I'm having an onboarding conversation with them is things like, for just by way of example, if I'm working with somebody who has real anxiety about speaking in public, okay, well, what is the difference between now versus what you want your future to look like? It may be something as simple as I don't sleep for 3
Right.
days before I have to give a presentation.
Right.
So a difference for me would be I could sleep for
Right.
those 3 days. The night before, okay, maybe a little tossy-turny here and there, but I'm gonna gain back 2.5 nights of sleep
Right.
prior to leading up.
Right.
That's huge. I mean, it's quantitative, but it's a quality of life difference. You know what that is. Okay, well, let's work towards getting that. You've operationalized the value in quality of life.
Yes, yes, and we call it value realization, right? And
Great
that's a
phrase.
very, very real thing, right? So let's face it, if you can not only demonstrate what that what if scenario could look like, and then 6, 12 months, however long, go back and actually prove it, well, what does that do to your business? What does that do to your relationship? What does that do for your audience?
Yes,
Now they're in a position to acknowledge that they're making progress. That's what's called changing the game.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there's a couple of comments coming in, things like how to take soft skill services, like we were just discussing in
Yeah.
coaching. It does matter into the dollars and cents of sorts, but how do you translate it into what matters to those people? Well,
Right.
if you are looking at statistics and so for example, in your turnover, if you're in a larger corporation, for example, what is your annual turnover? And do you have any sort of anecdotal or otherwise maybe exit interview um, statistics or case study examples about why people claim that they leave? Is it that there's a trend that indicates people feeling like they don't belong? If they feel like they're not belonging and they're trying to look for an organization where they feel more accepted, they feel more belonging, okay,
Right.
well, how many people is that impacting? And what does it cost you as an organization to replace that person?
Yeah.
From the posting the job position to doing the interviews to doing the how many hours, how many people on the team then have to cover for that person, or what doesn't get done in the number of hours until that position is filled. And of course, that person has to be brought up to speed.
Mhm.
Training hours at what dollar value? There are ways to extrapolate and say, if we don't fix this, let's call it a culture gap in our organization, if we don't put some program into place for, cultural fill in the blank, whatever, however your organization frames it,
Yeah.
who are we risking losing? So beyond just should we have more of a diversity initiative for the sake of something? No, there is a dollar value added. Who are we losing or who's not investing with us because we're unable to keep a
That's right.
particular group of people? There is always an external dollar value if you can find that.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me take that one step further. I know
oh,
we're running out of time.
yep. And then we'll
Think
grab David's
about
question.
those people, your the audience, the HR buyer. I sold HR tech since '06. HR tech buyers are underwater, stressed, have very little business acumen, don't speak in financial terms, which means that when they go to present your software or your solution or your training, they're going to have a low level of confidence. Again, if you have that value articulating conversation with them, identify the current state, put context around their current state so they can see a future they believe in, and repeat that through all your value props. At one point, they're going to feel really good about working with you.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And I think that addresses a lot of the questions that are in the chat as well. Things about how do you flesh out the ROI when the client doesn't know metrics.
Yep.
I think we just perhaps gave a couple of examples there. One thing they may know is things like the turnover rate or how much waste there is or how much it may not be the numbers. But again, go to imagine.
Yeah.
On average, if you have a team of 6 and you have a turnover, every 6 months or something, or you can never seem to fill this one spot, nobody stays. Okay, what is that costing you? What stress is that putting on the rest of the team to have to cover that? Or who's not getting served when this role is not filled?
Yep.
And
Yep.
what impact does that have on happiness, on stress, on the number of hours, who's working overtime? Can you figure out how can you dial down to something
Right.
where there's a dollar value?
And anyone who wants to talk more about this can reach out to either of us on LinkedIn. What I'll add to that is that think about
Yep.
the reality of the situation. Why are you rushing to get to an ROI? The person doesn't know the metrics. That should tell you to slow down. You're never going to get to a full current state, but you can gather, like you said, gather the insights you do know, and then build a sales process. Go to the people inside the organization. We're looking to articulate the business impact. We ran into a dead end. We're hoping you could help us.
Yes.
How's that, right?
Yes. Even something as simple as, you're talking to the head of whatever the organization is. How many emails do they get every day where people are complaining about something? How many unnecessary emails do they have how much time do they have to spend every day addressing emails, having phone calls, or in meetings about this issue? Would you like that time back? They may
Right.
not put a number on it in a metric sense, but oh my gosh, just to not have to continually have the discussion about this thing that just sucks the life
Right.
out of your
Right.
day. That's how often who's the
Right.
person who's constantly banging on your door, annoyed that they don't have this thing, that they are stuck with this, that
Right.
client X is still complaining about why? Okay, well, would you like that client to stop harassing you because they're still unhappy with this kind of thing? How about we get that client off your back?
Right.
Would that make your life better?
How much is it worth it to you?
Yes,
Right
that's
now,
the
they
final
might throw out
question.
a $10 million number, and you were going to say 5 million or $10 versus 5. Who cares? The point is,
Yes.
they just told you how much it's worth to them. They
Yes.
articulated the value, and now you have the favor.
Yes, exactly. Okay, well, I hate to do this, but we are over time. And so for everybody else out there, yes, this is being recorded. Yes, we will share the playback link with you. Keith, this has been absolutely amazing. How can people get in touch with you and the ROI shop?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. It's me and Mike Farber. So reach out to us that way. You could go to the roishop.com. And I think that's pretty well get you there for sure.
Terrific. And if you want to reach out to me, as always, on LinkedIn, it's just Dr. Laura Sicola. And of course, you can check out Vocal Impact Productions as well. But with that, we do look forward to hearing all of your feedback, and we wish you all incredible success. Keith, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.